Hi guys, and welcome to something a little bit different today. I've been receiving quite a few requests for a garage review, and I was originally doing garage reviews about every 4 or 5 months, and it occurred to me that I haven't done one in almost a year. So yeah, I thought it was time for another garage review, simply because some of you guys were asking for it, and I thought it was something a little bit different. As you can see, I've got a lot of tanks. I've got a lot of tanks. So maybe at the end of this video we will answer a question that some others have been asking, which is how many tanks do I actually own? How do we do this? Well, I think we'll just go down nation by nation and we'll take a look just to set the format. We'll start with premium tanks and then we'll go with normal. Okay, so starting with the Chinese, I've got 5 Chinese premium tanks. I've got the T-34-3, which I haven't aced yet, but I've had it for quite some time and just haven't been able to ace it. It's one of my cursed tanks. Talked about cursed tanks on a recent video. Yeah, it's a tank you can have very, very good games in, but it's also a tank that can absolutely suck, depending on the matchmaker. And the thing is, even before 9.6, I think the T-34-3 wasn't a very strong premium tank, and since 9.6 it's gotten even worse. So yes, Wargaming did buff this tank in 9.5, but 9.6 has basically made it a little bit worse. I don't rate this tank very highly, although I will admit that a lot of players play it better than I do, and I will admit that you can have some very, very good games in it. Consequently, a lot of players play this tank well, and it's quite hard to get an ace tanker in it, but I very rarely see the tank being played well. Moving on, we've got the WZ-111, which I really need to play more games in. I think I've only played about 2 or 3 games on this tank since getting the WZ-111 mission done. I just keep forgetting to play it. So yeah, I've only played a handful of games in it. My impressions of the WZ-111 is it's actually okay. I don't think it's... I think it's maybe not quite as good as the 112, because the 112 does have frontal armor, and unlike the frontal armor on the 112, I don't think the frontal armor on the 111 is as good, and I also find myself getting ammo racked a heck of a lot in the 111. Ammo rack seems to be behind the front plate, and tanks seem to have no problems penning me here compared to the 112. But yeah, 111 is a tank I need to play more. Type 64, I think, is the best value premium tank in the game. So I don't think it's the best premium tank in the game, but I think it's the best value premium tank in the game. It's not very expensive, and it's a very, very good tank. It's also a tier 6 tank, so I'm going to be reviewing the Type 64 sooner rather than later. The Type 62 was one of my first premium tanks. In fact, this was the second premium tank I ever bought. It went on sale probably about a week and a half, 2 weeks after I started to play World of Tanks. And of course, I'll be perfectly honest, and I'll say to you guys that I didn't even know what light tanks were when I bought the Type 62. I was hearing all these things about the Type 59, and the Type 59 had just been removed from the gift shop a couple of months prior to me playing World of Tanks, or maybe even a month before I started playing World of Tanks. So when the Type 62 appeared in the gift shop, even though I'd only had about 1,000 games played, I jumped straight into the gift shop and bought this tank thinking it was a Type 59. So yeah, there we go. That's we're gonna make some confessions today. Yeah, I bought the Type 62 by accident thinking it was a Type 59 because I didn't know anything about the game. But this was the second premium tank I bought, and as a consequence, it's probably the second, or it's the tank I've had in my garage longest, besides the Super Pershing, which was the first one I bought, but we'll come to that when we come to it. Type 62, I've reviewed the tank. I think it's quite a good tank, but I think it has suffered from power creep, and I think it's suffered because of the introduction of the WZ-131, WZ-132, and the Type 64. So it was an amazing tank. I think it's still a good tank, but I don't think it's as good as it once was. And then finally we come down to the 112, which personally I don't enjoy. I don't like this tank very much. I think it has far too many weaknesses and not enough strengths, but that's just my opinion. Again, I know there are players out there who play the tank very well. So that's my premium Chinese. I've got more premium Chinese tanks than I do normal tanks. So of the normal tanks, I only have two. I've got the 110 and the WZ-132. WZ-132 is a great tank. I absolutely love the WZ-132, but I recently got the Ace Tanker in it. I haven't played the tank that much because of its position on the tech tree. I think it's a great tank. I really should play the 132 more. The 110 is a fairly recent acquisition, I should say. Haven't played too many games in the 110, but I'm really enjoying the 110. And you'll notice that I don't have very many Chinese tanks because I didn't think very many Chinese tanks were worth keeping. All the way up from tier 1, I've got the Ace Tankers and all the tanks up to tier 8. As I say, the 132 I think is a very good tank. I'm going to be keeping it. It's a keeper. The T-34-2 I thought was okay. It's pretty generic. It's got decent turret armor. The hull armor is not very good. I thought it was a very, to be honest, boring tank with gun depression issues. The T-34-1 and the T-34-2, they're both solid medium tanks, but I didn't think either of them were worth keeping. And besides which, I used the T-34-2 to unlock the 120. I haven't bought the 120 yet, but I do have a very good crew waiting to go into this tank. So when I get around to buying the 120, I'll have a crew for it. So, but I'm not in a hurry. The 120 doesn't excite me very much, and the 121 doesn't excite me very much. So I've pretty much stalled on the Chinese mediums for the moment. I'm not in a hurry to get the 120. What I am doing is I am grinding the 110. It's one of my newest tanks. Recently started playing it after unlocking some modules on it with free XP. So I will be grinding out the 110, and I'm going to keep this tank. I really do enjoy the 110, even though I haven't played too many games in it. As you can see, I'm up to 86,000, 87,000 free XP. Still a long way to go, about halfway towards the WZ-111. But yeah, 110, good tank, gonna keep it. And I'm interested to see what the 111 can do at tier 9. 113, again, tank that doesn't excite me very much, but I am kind of looking forward to the 111, 1.4. But that's it for the Chinese. Moving on, we've got next one in the tech tree is France. And we're going to stick with the premium tanks. I just have 3 French premium tanks. I have the FCM50T, which won the recent vote for the next Is It Worth It? So looking forward to actually playing this tank. Maybe sit down, spend a whole day playing the FCM50T to get footage for the review. Overall, I don't think it's a very good tank for a new player. I think it's a good tier 8 premium tank. In fact, it can be a very good tier 8 premium tank, but it's not a tank for the inexperienced. I think that to play the FCM50T well, you need to have a lot of skills that are only earned through experience. I don't think people just telling you how to play the tank will give you the full rundown on how to play the tank well. I think experience counts for a lot when you're in the FCM50T, so I don't think it's a good tank for a new or inexperienced player, but I do think it's a very good tank if you're an experienced player. Yeah, we'll cover that in the review. FCM 36 Pack 40. I've reviewed this tank. It's an absolute monster at tier 3. Amazing view range, amazing gun. It does have problems. It's slow. It's got a very narrow gun arc, but it's just a great tank. Check out the review. The LE FH18B2, again, fairly rare tank. You don't see that many of them these days, though it does appear in the gift shop now and again. It's a very good tank. If you like arty, I think it's a pretty solid tier 5 premium arty. It used to be a tier 4, but yeah, don't play it that much. As you see, in all the time I've owned this tank, my crew haven't improved very much, but yeah, I think it's a decent tank. I have reviewed it, although to be honest I was never happy with this review, simply because I didn't want to sit down and play 20 or 30 games on this tank to do the review. I ended up putting a review in that someone had sent me, but very little gameplay in the review, but it is a good arty. Moving on, we've got the standard normal tanks that I haven't sold on the French lines. AMX AC48, very solid tier 8 TD. Although to be honest, I've been finding I'm having a lot of accuracy issues with this tank since 9.6. There are two tanks that I have played quite a lot of since 9.6 was released that I really feel the accuracy has been hurt on. One is the LTTB, and the other one is this one. This tank just does not feel accurate anymore. I don't use the final gun. I use the second last gun, the 100mm. Maybe I might switch to the final gun. It is a little bit more accurate, but I just prefer the rate of fire of the second gun on this TD. But yeah, it's a grinder. Still have quite a way to go until I get the Foch. Actually, not that far, about 40,000, 45,000 XP needed. But am I going to keep it? I doubt it. I think this tank is just too similar to the Foch at tier 9. But we'll see. I don't have a crew for the Foch at tier 9. I'm going to need to take the crew out of this tank anyway. So yeah, I don't know if I'm going to keep this. It's going to be a decision when I make it at the time. Other keepers, ELC AMX I've finished with. It's a great tank. It's a troll tank. It's a tank you hop into when you want to have some fun. So yeah, definitely worth keeping. AMX 1390 is just a fantastic tank. And even with the introduction of all the new light tanks, True 9.5, I still think the AMX 1390 is very, very competitive. It's a very good tank, and definitely a keeper. Two recent acquisitions for the French are the Lorraine 40T and the AMX 5100. Both tanks I bought while they were on sale over the Christmas period. I've got crews in both of them. Don't have a very good crew in the 5100. Put a female crew in the Lorraine 40T. I believe my plan for this crew is to basically move them into the Batchat eventually. But these are two brand new tanks in my garage, and they're both stock. So I'm going to be using free XP to unlock some modules on these tanks. We'll get around to playing them eventually, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. I'm going to need a lot of free XP for these tanks. And the final tank I have in my French collection is the S35CA, which was an absolutely amazing tier 5 TD. Very, very unusual, very, very unique. I love unique tanks. I think the S35CA was very, very unique. But the strongest or the biggest strength this tank had was its view range. It used to have 400 meters of view range, so I haven't played this tank since the nerfs. Do I have a binocs here? Let's put the binocs on. So yeah, I mean, I used to get over 500 meters view range with the binocs, and now it's up to 425. So yeah, don't know if this tank is going to be as good as it once was. The view range was its biggest strength. The gun is amazing on a tier 6 TD. 300 alpha damage, 165 millimeters of penetration. I kept it because of the gun, I kept it because of the view range, but now the view range is gone. I'm going to have to hop into this tank, play it a little bit more. It's a pity because I spent gold on the camo. Maybe I may end up selling it. I don't know. We'll see. But that's it for the French. As you can see from the tech tree, on the TD line, as I say, I'm up to the AC48, moving towards the Foch, which I'll probably get sooner rather than later. On the medium or heavy line, I'm up to the AMX 5100. And again, I'm in no hurry to play this tank because I need so much free XP for it. On the medium lines, I'm up to tier 9 on the Lorraine 40T, and again, need a lot of free XP to unlock some modules. And on the French, or on the RT line, recently got the Ace Tanker and sold the AMX 13F3. Have unlocked the Lorraine 15550, but even though I have a crew for it ready to go, I'm just grinding another RT line at the moment, and I don't feel like grinding two RT lines at the same time, so I've kind of put a pause on the French line. So in essence, I'm only playing one French tank as a grinder. That's the AMX, and the other French tanks are just taken out on special occasions. So that's pretty much it for the French. Moving on, we've got the Germans. I've got a lot of German tanks. The Germans were my first nation in World of Tanks. We'll take a look at the premium German tanks, and as you can see, I've got a lot of premium tanks for Germany. Panther 88, yeah, it's, I want to thank Forest Green Camo. Forest Green Camo purchased the Panther 88 for me. I've only played, I think, 3 games in the tank, and my initial impressions haven't been that favourable. As I said, it's very hard to tell a lot from a tank after just 3 games, but the armor has been a big disappointment. Even side-scraping the armor has been a disappointment. The gun is very, very good, but it doesn't feel as if it has .32 accuracy. I've been missing a lot of shots in the Panther 88, even with a very, very good crew. So yeah, it's kind of, the gun when it behaves is nice, but .32, it doesn't feel like .32. But I'll get around to reviewing the tank eventually, and I need to get a lot more games played in this tank before I get a full opinion of it. In my opinion, it's just a big Panzer IV's. It's a sniper, needs to be played a little bit more passively, but it plays pretty much like the Panzer IV's does, and yeah, we'll get around to the Panther 88 eventually. Need to play more games, need to ace it. As I say, only a handful of games played. The Löwe, I do have quite a few games played, but I've never sat down to play this tank back to back. It gets its daily double when I remember remember to play it. Still haven't aced the Löwe, but I really do need to. It's one of these tanks I need to sit down and just play game after game after game in. It's a solid premium tank. I mean, it's not as good as a fully upgraded Tiger II, but it's better than a stock Tiger II, and that's pretty much what a premium tank is supposed to be. I think the Löwe is actually quite good. I think it's a very good side scraper. I think it's got a good gun, but I do think the Tiger II is better when it's fully upgraded. The biggest problem the Löwe has is a lot of players start with Germany as the first nation. I know I did, and as a result they buy a Löwe as their first tier 8 premium tank. So you get a lot of inexperienced players driving Löwes, but yeah, I think it's quite a solid premium tank. It's nothing special, but it's definitely not as bad as the reputation it gets. Moving on, we've got another new acquisition in my garage, the Stug 4. Only played 1 game in this tank ever. Need to get into it, need to play it more, and we'll probably end up reviewing it. A lot of you guys want me to review reward tanks, so I may end up reviewing it. But yeah, I spoke about that in a recent video. Tiger 88 is a tank I don't play very much, and I need to play it more because I need to get the ace tanker, so I keep forgetting to play this tank basically, and also I don't enjoy playing it very much. This was a big disappointment to me because I basically love the Jagdtiger. I love the tier 9 TD, and I don't like this tank as much. It's just too slow. It's just too unmaneuverable. It's just got bad traverse. It's got a decent gun. When you go hull down, it's okay, providing the enemy team don't switch to gold ammo. But yeah, it's a little bit situational. I think, strangely enough, this tank might perform better on city maps, but that's just because I haven't played too many games in it. This is the nice thing about the garage review. I get to see some tanks that I've kind of been neglecting, need to play more, but yeah, Tiger 88 is definitely one of these tanks I need to play more. I don't think it's a great tank. I think it's a great crew trainer. I think it's a great money maker. The ammo is very cheap, the repair costs are very cheap, but it's not a game that it's not a tank you can carry games in. I think it's a one-trick pony, so I don't enjoy playing it very much, but as I say, if you just want to earn credits and train crew members, it's a pretty solid premium tank. Next up, we've got the Micro Mouse, which, yeah, I mean, I get requests to play this quite a lot. It's still a good tank. I've reviewed it, and, yeah, it's not as good as it used to be, but it's still pretty good. If you've got the opportunity to get one, then you've got one of the rarest tanks in the game. Congratulations. PZ2D was the latest tank given out as a free gift by Wargaming. I've only played, I think, about 2 games in this tank. One of them was the Ace Tanker, and I haven't played it since. So, basically, my first impressions of this tank was it was a bit of a disappointment. I thought the penetration of the gun, in fact the whole gun, is pretty poor, and the stats really don't tell the whole story. 55 kilometers an hour, it's not that fast, and 45 degrees per second traverse speed, it's not that fast. Power to weight ratio is quite poor. However, the view range at tier 2 is quite good, and yeah, I think I need to play more games in this tank. I may end up, it also occurs to me that I need to review it. So yeah, there we go, moving on. T15 is a tank I've reviewed. It's a good tank. If you like scouts, I don't recommend this for a new player, don't recommend it for an inexperienced player, but I think it's a pretty fun tank. It doesn't get special matchmaking, so if you do get it into higher tier games, your gun is going to be very, very disappointing. Basically, in higher tier games, you're a scout, full stop. If you don't like scouting or can't scout, then I can't recommend the T15, even though I like the tank. Gross Tractor Krupp, as you can see, probably my worst win rate of all the tanks. I reviewed this tank, but I need to review it in high definition. I need to do the review for this tank again. I've played a lot more games in this tank since the review. The review was rushed out in poor quality because I thought the tank was only going to be available for 24 hours. It turned out it was available for a couple of weeks, but my first impressions of the tank were very, very favorable, and since then I've played a lot more games in it, and my win rate has collapsed. My stats in the tank are quite good. My WN8 is quite good. My damage is quite good. It's just my win rate is terrible, and that's one of the problems with the tank, and it's a problem I didn't mention when I was doing the review. So my opinion of the Gross Tractor Krupp has basically changed. I don't think it's as good as it was when I did the review, and that's why I sit down and don't review a tank until I've played an entire day in it and played about 20 or 30 games, because I don't think basically just a handful of games can give you a good enough impression of a tank. But Gross Tractor, need to re-review it. PCS35, I've reviewed this tank as well. It's a great tank when it's top tier. It's a good tank in tier 4 games, but it doesn't get special matchmaking in tier 5 games. It sucks. More information about that in the review. T25, I've reviewed it, and it's my favorite tier 5 premium tank. It's just a great tank. It suffers a little bit if you don't have a 100% crew in it, but I think it's a very, very good tank. Very fast, it's very versatile, it's very good at maneuvering across the battlefield. Its traverse speed is quite poor, but the armor can be troll. It does bounce well for a medium tank. It can angle, it can side scrape. The gun is pretty good. It's just an all-round medium tank. I think it's not a pure medium tank, it's a little bit more of a sniper, but that's speed. It's all about the speed, being able to flank in this tank. It's definitely my favorite tier 5 premium tank. Hydrostat, one of the rarest tanks in the game, and again, I've reviewed it, and I don't think it's brilliant. I think it's okay. I think that it's very, very similar to the in-game PC4H, but the in-game PC4H gets the derp gun, and even though it's got the same final gun as the in-game PC4H and the same gun as actually the Stug 4 gets, it's a good gun, but I think the tank is okay. The armor, it suffers with its armor. Biggest strength this tank has is its maneuverability. It's quite fast and it traverses very well with a very good traverse speed. So yeah, it's not a fantastic tank. Certainly not worth spending a lot of money just to get your hands on the tank. It's not worth that much, but if you do have the opportunity to pick one up, it's just a pretty average medium or premium tank. It's not brilliant, but it's not bad. PC4S is a tank I'm going to be reviewing soon. Yeah, it's a sniper. What can I say? I believe this tank is more like a tank destroyer than it is a medium tank. Down to its really, really poor traverse speed, its poor turret traverse speed, but it's got a great gun. It's got poor maneuverability as well, so it really, really benefits from maybe going hull down and basically sniping. It's a pure sniper, just lacks the maneuverability, lacks the turret traverse, lacks the hull traverse to be anything else than a sniper, and play it more like a tank destroyer. Panther M10 is a tank I really need to play more games in. I think I've only got about 5 games played in this tank since buying it. I think it's better than a lot of the negative reviews gives it. I don't think it's a great tank. I don't think it's anywhere near a great tank, but the reviews are very, very negative for this tank, and I disagree. I think the tank, in the short number of games or small number of games I've played in the Panther M10, I think the tank can be quite good, but it's underwhelming. It's got very poor view range for a tier 7. The gun is a little bit lacking. I mean, when you compare the rate of fire on this tank compared to the E25, which is basically, it's an E25 gun. I think the aim time is poor, very poor for the gun. So the gun is rapid firing, but it's got poor aim time and poor view range. The armor isn't fantastic either, and this armor here is not spaced armor, so it doesn't give you, it gives the impression it looks like spaced armor, but it's not. So yeah, Panther M10, a little bit of a disappointment, but it's definitely not as bad as people say. I am looking forward to getting down and playing, you know, as I say, 20-30 games in this tank in order to do a proper review, but that's just my first impression. Panzer B2 I have reviewed. It's a troll tank. When you're having a bad day, hop into the the PZB2 and just have fun, because in no time you're probably going to be smiling. It's one of the rare tanks that only sees tier 4s. It's only ever top tier. So yeah, it can be a lot of fun to play. Dicker Max is another tank I've reviewed, and I like this tank because it's unusual, or at least it was unusual before the Sturla Immel was introduced into the game. It's got a lot of history, it's got a lot of character, it needs to be played very passively, and its biggest strength is its gun depression. It's got surprisingly good DPM, and I think if you like tank destroyer play, if you like passive play, then the Dicker Max is very, very underrated. You don't see very many of them. If you like to be an active player, then avoid the Dicker Max. It's definitely a passive tank destroyer. If you try to play it any other way, it just suffers. E25, what can I say? It's just a legend. Recently removed, very, I don't know if it's ever going to be made available again. I'm sure Wargaming might put it up for sale in the future. But, yeah, just an absolutely amazing tank. Removed for being maybe overpowered, but I disagree. I think the E25 is only overpowered if it's in the hands of an experienced player who understands game mechanics, who understands camo ratings, who understands penetration, weak spots. I think in the hands of an inexperienced player, the E25 was a pretty average tank, but it doesn't take away from the fact that even if you weren't very experienced, the E25 was still a fun tank to play. So that's, I've got a heck of a lot of German premium tanks. Moving on, let's look at my normal tanks, and I've got a lot of German normal tanks that I've decided to keep as well. PZ1C, it's a legend. It's a lot of fun to play. The only reason it's still at the top of my playlist is I want to get 6 cents on the commander. As soon as I get 6 cents on the commander, I'll drop this tank back down into the reserves. Oru-251 is a relatively new tank to me. I'll admit, put my hand up and say I'm still learning how to play it. I've been really unlucky. I've been playing it a lot solo, and I've been getting terrible teams, and my stats in the tank are not fantastic. I will be honest and say I'm still trying to learn how to play this tank. I have been having more success recently in the tank, playing it like a medium tank, but it's just one of these tanks I can't get wins in it. And then again, I don't have that many games in it, so my win rate is artificially poorer than it probably should be. The mouse, what can I say? This Behemoth, it's probably, I can't remember, I think it was my first tier 10 heavy. Yeah, I think it was my first tier 10 heavy. I think I got this before I got the E100. I've had this tank a long time. Don't play it all that often, but I've been playing it more because of a lot more heavy missions, and I still haven't got the ace. I've had a lot of classic games in this tank. I've had a lot of awesome games in the mouse. It's one of these cursed tanks. I just can't get the ace tanker in, and yeah, so mouse, what can I say about it? It's fantastic. Well, no, it's a terrible tank. What am I saying? It's a very situational tank. In some situations, the tank is fantastic. In some situations, it's terrible. But yeah, if I get the ace, it'll be stuck into the reserves and only played on special occasions. Borsig. The Borsig is a grinder. Wow, first grinder I've come across for the Germans. This is a grinder, and yeah, I need a lot of XP. I haven't even unlocked the final gun on this tank yet. It's a tank I keep on forgetting to play. For some reason, I keep forgetting to play the Borsig. But I do. I really enjoy the Borsig. I haven't played that many games in it. As you can see, don't have that much XP on the tank yet. But it's a lot of fun to play. I do enjoy the Borsig, even with the view range nerfs. Moving on, the looks. I rebought this tank just to get the ace tanker in it, and I've enjoyed it so much I decided to keep it. It's just a fun little tank. finally got 6 cents on my commander. Yep, really recommend the looks. It's fun. Lots of looks replays on my channel. PC4H is another tank I rebought in order to get the Ace Tanker on and ended up keeping because I forgot how much fun this tank was with the derp gun. And I'm happy that I decided to keep the PC4H because I've completed a lot of medium tank missions in this tank. Killed 2 tank destroyers. Well, most tank destroyers are a one-hit kill for this gun. Kill arty, that's one-hit kills with this gun. Kill other enemy light tanks, yep. One-hit kill with this gun. So I've finished a lot of medium tank missions with the PC4H. Really happy I kept it. And again, it's a tank I'm playing quite a lot because I want 6 cents on the commander, and then I'll dump it into the reserves. Indian Panzer is a tank I decided to keep. I like the Indian Panzer. I didn't... had a tough time. When I first started playing this tank, it was before it got buffed. I thought the view range was absolutely terrible on it, but since then it got a view, not the view range, the aim time, sorry. Aim time was terrible on it, but since then it got an aim time buff. It also got a rate of fire buff. I think the tank is better than it was. I don't think it's a fantastic tank, but it's quite fast, it's quite maneuverable, and yeah, it's just got a great gun. I think the Indian Panzer is a pretty good tank, and the armor is quite troll. E50 was my first tier 9 medium tank, and as a result I decided to keep it. It's one of the few tanks I actually have a... Oh, I recently took the spall liner off. I did have a spall liner on this tank. I recently replaced it. But yeah, I used it for ramming. Had a lot of fun in it. And as you can see, the stats of the tank are fantastic. But yeah, E50. Great rate of fire. Decent gun. Just a fun tank to play. Very versatile. Can play it like a heavy. Can play it like a medium tank. Can play it like a sniper. Leopard Prototype A was a tank I bought over the Christmas period while it was on sale. Don't even have a crew for it. It's completely stock, and it's not going to get played anytime soon because there are lots of other tanks I need to play first that I'm building up free XP in order to play. So Prototype A, I am looking forward to it, but it's not at the top of my list. Moving on, we've got the E50M. What can I say? Just a fantastic tank. Fantastic tier 10 medium tank. A lot of people complain about its DPM, but it can snipe. Again, it's very versatile. Can play it like a medium, can play it like a sniper, can play it like a heavy tank in some situations, can side scrape, got a great gun, and it can ram tanks to death. I mean, what more do you want? It's a great tank. E50M, worth keeping, always going to keep it. Tiger 1 was a tank I rebought when someone on stream suggested I can't be a World of Tanks fan or a tank fan without owning a Tiger, so I rebought it. Played it a few times, got a couple of ace tankers in it. As you can see, my crew in it aren't very good, but yeah, just rebought it because you have to have a Tiger in your garage. Tiger P was another tank I rebought recently. Haven't even put camo on it, waiting for the next camo sale to go, but rebought the Tiger P to get ace tankers in them, and did. So need to put camo on this tank again. You can see my crew isn't very good. A lot of my crew are still 75%. So yeah, Tiger P, it's just unusual. It's a different tank. It's a little bit of a collector's piece. So I like the armor, like the Tiger P, and I would probably prefer to play the Tiger P over the Tiger any day. So yeah, I decided to keep it after rebuying it to ace it. Tiger 2 was my first tier 8 heavy tank. It's the tank I learned how to play World of Tanks in. It's the tank I learned about angling, side scraping, going hull down. I was a complete and utter, you know, inexperienced player before I got to the Tiger 2. So yeah, learned how to play World of Tanks in this tank. Played it from stock, and it's just always going to have a place in my garage as a result. I think it's a very solid tank. E75, as you can see, my stats in the E75 aren't fantastic, and again, that's because it's my first tier 9, and again, didn't play the E75 very well. Still learning how to play the game when I had the E75. So yeah, it's just an amazing tank, and again, everyone deserves to have an E75 in their garage. Great tank. VK4502B or P. Again, one of my first tier 9s. I kept this tank even when it was considered bad because for some reason I liked it. Don't know why, but it got buffed. It's amazing, and I'm going to be really sad when they remove this tank from the game. I think it's a great tank. I know it may not be historically accurate or even a real tank at all, but this thing is just a monster. I love this tank. It's going to be very, very bad, or I'm going to be very, very sad when it's removed. E100, again, complete monster. One of my first tier 10s, along with the mouse, and again, you can see from my stats, didn't really have as much experience when I first started playing the E100, but it's a great tank. It's a very, very good tank. It's much more mobile. I would rather play the E100 over the mouse, but I've got plenty of ace tankers in the E100, and I don't have an ace tanker in the mouse yet, but choice between the two of them, I'd rather be driving an E100. Moving on, we've got the Nashorn, which is about one of the only German tanks I actually kept while grinding through it, simply because of the gun. I think the gun on this tier 6 TD, the fact you got 203 average penetration with 240 alpha damage and a rate of fire of almost 10 shots a minute, it's just a great gun. Nashorn, really, really enjoyed it. It had fantastic view range. Again, haven't played it since the view range nerf. Very sad about it. I think it had 390 meters of view range. So I need to play this since the nerf, but I still reckon it's a pretty good tank. Ferdinand and Jagdpanther 2 are two tanks I rebought while they were on sale recently. I already know I'm keeping the Jagdpanther 2, so I spent gold on premium or on camo. But basically what happened was when I first ground up the German TDs, as still a new player, hopped into the Ferdinand, played about 6-7 games in this tank, and absolutely hated it, and sold it. So having spent all the credits on this tank, I have no idea. No idea. There we go. I spent 2.5 million on this tank when I first started playing World of Tanks, and played about 7 games in it, thought it was absolutely terrible, 46% win rate, and sold it straight away. Made a loss of 1.25 million credits. Put that money towards the Jagdpanther 2 instead. Hated the Ferdinand first time round, but I've rebought it because I didn't ace it. Never did well in this tank, and I'm looking forward to playing it. The only reason I'm not playing it at the moment is I don't have a crew. Jagdpanther 2, exactly the same story. Don't have a crew for it, but it's ready to go, ready to be played. Jagdpanther 2 I enjoyed much more than the Ferdinand. Really, really happy I sold the Ferdinand so quickly to get the Jagdpanther 2. This is much more of my type of tank, but I never got the ace while I was grinding through it when I was a new player, so I'm going to have to play this tank again, both tanks again. Jagdtiger is an amazing tank, absolutely amazing tank. Love this tank. It was my first tier 9 TD, and I thought it was fantastic. Still think it's good, and every time I see the Jagdtiger in my garage, I regret not playing it more. Need to play this tank more. Keep forgetting to. Just too many tanks. It's a great tank. Definitely a keeper. Jagdpanzer E100 again. My first tier 10 TD, and it's an amazing tank, or not an amazing tank, it's a little bit situational, but it's amazing fun to play on occasion. I just love the feeling when you click your mouse button and that gun fires. But yeah, I think it's a little bit underpowered these days, but still definitely worth keeping for me. GWE 100 has a little bit of history behind it. Basically, when I first got this tank, it was a tier 7. Didn't even have a crew for it. Basically, what happened was Wargaming introduced tier 10 RT. They moved the tier 7 RTs up to tier 10. When I found out that was happening, I basically figured, oh, I can get a free tier 10. So actually, this was my first tier 10. Because this was automatically moved to tier 10. But I basically spent a week, probably about 100 games a day, grinding out German RT. I hadn't played much RT up till then, but I played RT after RT after RT in order to unlock the GWE 100. Did it with about 24 hours to spare, and ended up with my first tier 10 when it was moved to tier 7 to tier 10. So again, looking at the tech tree, starting with the RT on the top, you'll see that I ground up to the GW Tiger, which was a tier 6, got the GWE 100, got my free tier 10, and the new RT that had been added to the game. I'm going to have to rebuy at some stage in order to get ace tankers in, but some new arty in here I've never had the opportunity of playing. But then again, I'm grinding an arty line at the moment, so not in a hurry to rebuy those tanks. As far as the other things go, as I say, I'm still grinding the Borsig. I'm only up to tier 8. Still a long way to go till the Waffenträger Panzer IV, and even longer till the Waffenträger auf E100. The other TD line I've finished. We're up to tier 10. Not very many keepers along the line. I do need to rebuy or buy for the first time the Stug 3B. Never got to play that tank. So yeah, moving on. Tiger P. I finished with the 2 German heavy lines. Finished with the older medium line, and just need to work on getting the Leopard PTA up and running, and then finally get the Leopard. But as you can see, I'm pretty much I'm very close to finishing the Germans. Ooh, VK452A is on sale at the moment. Oh, never mind. Okay, moving on. That's Germans. This is going to be a long video, I can already tell that. Huge amount of tanks. So UK, let's take a look at the premiums first. Moving on, Light Mark 6C is a tank I haven't played too many games in. I did a review. I played enough games in this to review it. But as you can see, my crew are terrible. I think this tank would benefit from a 100% crew, but my crew are absolutely terrible in this tank. I haven't enjoyed it, didn't enjoy it, still don't enjoy it, and avoid playing it at every opportunity. But some people have told me it's quite good. Haven't played it since it was buffed, since it got its gun got buffed. It got a little bit more penetration on its guns, so yeah, I might give this tank another go, but I reviewed it and I wasn't too complimentary about it. I think it's a very average tank. Moving on, Matilda Black Prince has been done. I have reviewed it. I think it's a very frustrating tank to play due to its speed, but it's got decent armor for a medium tank, and the gun is a gun that's capable of damaging and destroying anything it faces. So great gun, good armor, but it's just a frustrating tank to play. Think there are a lot of better tier 5 premium tanks you can buy. Excelsior was the latest review. I thought this was a very average tank from my first impressions. Didn't play it very much. Sat down, did the review, and my opinion changed. I think it's a very strong tank. Moving on, TOG 2. Well, what can I say about the TOG 2? Hopefully I'm going to be reviewing the TOG 2 pretty soon because it's a tier 6 tank. Fantastic crew trainer. Not a lot of fun to play sometimes. Sometimes this tank can be amazing fun to play. Definitely needs to be an experienced player in a TOG 2. I don't think a new player will find this tank a lot of fun to play. Even experienced players find this tank extremely frustrating to play. When this tank gets its opportunity, though, it's an amazing tank. The problem is it doesn't get an opportunity to be amazing all that often, but it is a decent moneymaker. It is a good crew trainer, and it's going to be reviewed sooner rather than later. AT-15A, again, a tank a lot of people underestimate. I think this tank is underrated. I think the tank is a lot better than people said or say, and it got buffed, so its matchmaking got buffed, and its hit points got buffed. I think it's quite a decent tank, although again at tier 7 it's up against some very tough competitors. Would I rather play an SU-122-44 over an AT-15A? Definitely, but that doesn't mean that the AT-15A is a bad tank. I think it's okay. Moving on, the Sexton 1, again, I think it's a pretty good tank, but a terrible purchase. As RT goes, as tier 3 RT goes, I think the tank is actually okay. Problem is, it's arty, and the problem is, it's a tier 3, and I've covered that in its review. It's been reviewed already. So moving on to the normal tanks in my British lines, I've got the Matilda, a tank I rebought simply to get the Ace Tanker, but it will probably end up keeping simply because it's a beast. And the reason I know it's a beast is tanks that are usually beasts are tanks I find it harder to get Ace Tankers in. I haven't sat down to play this tank game after game after game. To be honest, I've been quite disappointed in the Matilda since rebuying it, but it's one of these tanks where you have a huge game or you don't, but I still need the Ace on it, so recent purchase. Another recent purchase is the Sherman 3. I've started up the new British line, so I'm up to the Sherman 3. Recently unlocked the final gun on it, but I'm kind of debating kind of debating whether or not to actually use the final gun or whether to stick with the derp. Not quite sure. Haven't played that many games of the tank. To be honest, I'm not enjoying the tank very much. I think the armor has been really, really poor, but then again, I've got to keep on telling myself it's an M4. Nothing special about this tank, and I definitely won't be keeping it. However, I will be keeping the Centurion 7-1. This thing is an absolute beast. Absolutely love this tank. For a while, my stats in it were absolutely terrible, but since unlocking, since using the 105 on this gun, or on this tank, it's just a fantastic tank. Still, it's a fantastic tank because I'm still trying to get the Flaming Ace Tanker in it, and it's bloody difficult. I've had amazing games in this tank, and I just can't get the ace. So it's definitely a good tank. Yep, so Centurion 7-1. I'm just looking at it here, and I'm already itching to stop this review and go in and play some games. Churchill 7 is a tank I rebought again fairly recently. Very, very ugly looking tank in my opinion, but yeah, it's a tank I rebought simply just to get the Ace Tanker, and believe me, as soon as I do, I'll be selling it. I didn't enjoy the Churchills, any of the Churchills first time round, and I don't enjoy any of them second time round either. I think it's a very, very underwhelming tank, a very, very poor tier 6 heavy, and going to look forward to getting the ace and just getting out of the tank. But as I say, recent purchase, haven't played too many games in it. FV215B, absolutely amazing tier 10. Probably my favorite tier 10 in the game at the moment. My win rate in it is not fantastic. I've been playing a lot of solo games and not doing well in the tank. But having said that, when the tank gets a decent matchup, and I know you could say when it gets a decent matchup and isn't fighting a pile of tier 10 TDs, I think the tank is quite good. I absolutely love this tank, and again, I'm going to be very sad when Wargaming removed it from the game. I'm hoping to get the Ace Tanker before that happens, but again, it's a tank I don't play very many games in, and need to play more. Alecto is a tank I was challenged to get an Ace Tanker in, so I rebought it. Haven't played that many games in it due to the fact missions means I'm playing tier 5 and above. This is a tier 4. It did get hit by the nerf bat, view range nerf bat, quite a lot in 9.6, but haven't played enough games in it since then to really know whether or not it's a decent tank. But need to get into it, need to play it, need to get the Ace Tanker. I don't think I'm going to be keeping it. I'll probably sell it after the Ace Tanker, but yep, just another new purchase. The Tortoise is a grinder. I'm a long, long way away from the FV215B183, so yeah, still playing the Tortoise, and I've been disappointed. I actually prefer the AT-15A. If I was in a tier 10 game, I would rather be in an AT-15, or sorry, the AT-15 than the Tortoise. I just find that this tank, just this Commander's cupola, although it's a loader's cupola, it's just so big. Compared to the AT-15A, look how small that is compared to the Tortoise. So the AT-15A is smaller, it's a harder target to hit, it has roughly the same armor profile, but just this makes it so much easier to hit, and it's a lot flatter, and I really haven't enjoyed the Tortoise. Haven't had a big monster game in the Tortoise yet, but I've got a long, long way to go before I get to tier 10. Cruiser Mark IV is a tank I played really badly first time round. Rebought it, did the Ace Tanker, rebought it to get an Ace Tanker, and found that I enjoyed the Bofors so much that I ended up keeping the tank. So still need to recover and try and get a better win rate in the tank, but it's one of these few tanks I bought to get an Ace Tanker and ended up enjoying it so much I decided to keep it. Haven't played it in months. Valentine is a tank I have rebought. In fact, this is the third time I rebought the Valentine. Bought it the first time, ground through it, didn't get the Ace Tanker. Sold it, moved on. Rebought it to get the Ace Tanker, got the Ace Tanker, and sold it. And then with the new tech tree and with the new British lines, I needed to get the Valentine again. So I have just rebought this tank. In fact, I bought it just before starting this review. So I actually need to... oh, hang on, that's the wrong radio. Actually need to rebuy. I think this gun is better. There we go. I'm just rebuying the Valentine because I need to use the Valentine to get to the Archer and the Bishop. So yeah, new tank, just rebought it. Need a crew for it, need to set it up, but Yeah, we'll see. I don't like this tank very much. And moving on. Comet, absolute legend of a tank. And every time I see the Comet, I want to rebuy the Cromwell. Did a video on this tank very recently, and that'll tell you all you need to know about the Comet. It's a great tank, definitely a keeper, never going to sell it. Centurion Mark 1 and the Carnarvon, two really strong tier 8 tanks for the Brits. Really like these tanks, and it's down to their gun depression, and it's down to their 20 pounder guns. Love the guns, love the turrets, love the gun depression. Play them a lot like medium tanks, or play them a lot like American tanks, and you can't go wrong. Love the Carnarvon, love the Centurion, both keepers. FV4202 was bought recently and got the ace recently. I haven't played that many games in the tank, but I'm enjoying it. I think it's a very solid tank, and again, gonna be quite sad when it gets removed, but then again, I haven't gotten to know the tank very much, haven't played that many games in it. Conqueror, what can I say? Conqueror, just an absolute beast. It lives up to its name. The Conqueror is the Conqueror. Again, I didn't enjoy this tank when I first got it, but after unlocking the 120mm gun on this tank, it became a whole different animal. I don't know why, because I love the Conqueror, but I do. It has to be because of the gun. The hull armor is quite poor for a heavy tank. The turret armor is poor for a heavy tank. Yeah, the hull or the turret armor can work, but more often than not, I find it doesn't. The gun depression is not fantastic for a British tank after playing the Carnarvon, but yet that gun, that 120mm, is just a great gun. So yeah, Conqueror. I don't know why I love the tank, but I do. And the AT-15. I don't know why. I don't like the Tortoise. Dislike the Tortoise so much, but I absolutely love the AT-15A. I can't explain why. I play this like a heavy tank. I tend to play it very well. Some of my best stats are in this tank. I think my highest XP ever is in the AT-15. I just love the AT-15. Don't know why, but it works for me. It suits me. And as I say, I don't play it like a TD. I play it like a heavy tank. Like to be on the front lines. And I think the DPM on this thing is an absolute beast. Again, I hear a lot of people giving this tank negative reviews. I haven't found that. I've put some really good AT-15 gameplay videos up on my channel. A lot of AT-15 ace tankers. Yeah, I just love this tank. Can't explain why. So there we are for the Brits, and as you can see from the tech tree, I finished with the mediums. I need to rebuy the Cromwell. I really enjoy the Cromwell. It's the one tank on the medium line I'm really looking forward to rebuying. Still grinding towards the 183. I've finished with the British heavies. No lower tier Brits I actually want to rebuy. Do need to rebuy the Black Prince to get the ace, so I'll do that after the Churchill 7. But yeah, I kept the final 3 tanks here. I absolutely love them. I'm just getting started on the new British tanks. Sherman 3 is currently being played. I'm now working towards the Firefly, and I need to ace the Sherman 3. Valentine I rebought earlier today, and because I just realized that I needed to get to the Archer, not the Bishop, but the Archer, and we'll start working up the new British TD lines as soon as I finish with the Valentine. And British Arty, never played any British Arty. Again, playing one, or I'm grinding one line of Arty at the moment. I have no intention of starting another. Moving on, we've got the USA, and we're going to take a look at the premium tanks again. So quite a few American premium tanks. Starting off with the T1E6. This tank, I have a love-hate relationship with this tank. The armor is terrible. In a straight line it's quite fast, but the maneuverability is bad, and its gun is very good. The gun can be very troll, but you tend to, I don't know, just me, I tend to die a lot in this tank. But the fact you can one-clip tanks, or you can kill tanks with one clip. T1E6, it's a gift tank, it was a reward tank. It's not terrible, but it's definitely not a tank I play very much. T2 Light, the first premium tank you can buy from the gift shop, for the only tier 2 premium tank you can buy on a regular basis. Yeah, I think it's an amazing tank. It's a lot of fun to play, but I don't recommend playing this tank if you're a new or inexperienced player. I think the T2 Lite needs to have equipment. It needs to have very good crew. It's a lot of fun to play, but as I say, only if you are an experienced player. But yeah, this thing is a stress relief tank. Play this when you want to sort of just have fun. Moving on, T7 Combat Car. It's a tank I need to replay. I absolutely hated this tank. I've reviewed it, absolutely hated it, and that was before it got buffed. So the two biggest issues I had with the T7 Combat Car was its top speed. I thought the tank was just too slow, and the penetration on its gun was just too poor. And both of those things were buffed, so it's a lot faster than it used to be. It accelerates a lot faster than it used to be, and the gun has more penetration. So this is one of these tanks I actually need to re-review, but I just can't get myself to playing low-tier tanks again. I'm up to tier 6 now, so going back and doing more tier 2s, not fun. M22 Locust, I think, is an absolutely amazing tank. Again, it's one of these tanks you need to be an experienced player to get the most out of, but I think it's still a pretty good tank for a new player or an inexperienced player because it's fast, but it can be used as a sniper. It's got a great gun, so it can be played passively. It's fast enough to get you into trouble, but it's also fast enough to get you out of trouble. I love the M22 Locust. I really, every time I see it in my garage, I think to myself, why don't I play this tank more? Again, it's one of these tanks you pop into just to have fun. Ram 2 I reviewed recently, and yeah, I mean, what can I say? It's not, there's nothing special, but there's nothing terrible about this tank. It's got surprisingly good armor, better than I was expecting. It's got a good gun, and it's just a pretty decent medium tank. You're going to earn credits in it, you're going to train crew members in it, and I think it's underrated. But more of that in the review. The Fury, I think, is a very good tank, mainly down to the fact it's not that much worse than the in-game Easy 8, and even though it doesn't get special matchmaking, it's a tier 6 tank that can do well, it's competitive even in a tier 8 game. And really, because it's a premium tank, you earn credits, and it's a good crew trainer, and yeah, the armor is terrible, and sometimes you have to fire quite a lot of premium in it, but it's a premium tank, and it's pretty much the same tank as the in-game Easy 8. So basically, if you play the in-game Easy 8 well, and you like the in-game Easy 8, then the Fury is an amazing tank. If you don't like the in-game Easy 8 and you struggle to play the in-game Easy 8 well, then you're not going to enjoy the Fury. It's basically needs to be played a little bit more passively, but it can be played like a medium tank. Should be used for flanking, using to get to the rear of enemy tanks. I think it's just a good tank, but that's just my opinion. I've reviewed it. You can find out more in that review. Super Pershing was my first premium tank ever, and it's more games. I've got more games played in this tank than any other tank ever. I bought it when I was still a new player. I think I had about, I don't know, 800-900 games played when I bought this tank originally. So yeah, I've never sold it. I've got a soft spot for the Super Pershing, and I'm one of the few people who doesn't think it's a bad tank. I don't think it's a great tank. I think there are much better tier 8 premium tanks than the Super Pershing, but I don't think it's a bad tank. I don't think this tank deserves the hate it gets. I do think it got nerfed. I do think that it's worse than it used to be. The armor is definitely a lot worse than it used to be, but I still think the tank is good value for money. And that's the key thing when I'm asking, is it worth it? I think the tank is value for money. But yeah, we'll go over that when we talk about the Super Pershing in its review. T14, again, a tank I reviewed recently. Yeah, this tank is much better than a lot of people would have you believe. I think the armor is good. I think the gun, even though it gets a terrible rap and is supposedly a terrible gun, is actually quite good. The only thing that people do wrong in the T14 is try and snipe in it, and it's not a sniper. And if you can get that out of your head and stop trying to snipe in a T14, I think the T14 as a heavy tank goes is actually quite good. And finally we've got the T34, which is probably as solid a performer and consistent tank that as it's probably the most consistent tier 8 premium tank. That's what I'm trying to say. You will consistently do well in this tank. You will consistently earn credits. It's a consistently good crew trainer. It's a one-trick pony. I mean, it's not fast. It's not maneuverable. The hull armor is typically American. The turret armor is typically American. It's got a poor rate of fire. It's got the DPM is not fantastic, but it's got a great gun. This tank will earn you money. It'll earn you credits, and it will train up your American heavy crews. It's just an American tank. You go hull down, use its turret armor, use its gun, and as I say, the tank is a one-trick pony. If tanks get to your side and rear, you're going to suffer in a T-34, but if you can go hull down and hold a choke point, it's a great tank. So yeah, I think of all the premium tanks in the game, one of the most consistent performers is definitely the T-34, because the skill level required for the T-34 isn't that high. It has a one trick. You go hull down, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, I think it's a pretty solid premium tank. Moving on to my regular Americans, and so many. M2 Light is a tank I bought a couple of days ago just to get the ace tanker. It's just the M2 Light. Fast in a straight line, poor maneuverability, can't traverse, terrible traverse, poor ground resistance. The gun is okay, but I've only played 2 games since rebuying it, and I actually just need to ace it, and then I'll sell it and move on to another tank. I haven't got an ace tanker in. The Chaffee is a tank I absolutely loved before it was nerfed into the ground. I've only played a few games in this tank since the nerfs. I thought it was okay, but it's definitely not the Chaffee I loved prior to 9.5. Yep, it's or 9.4. I can't remember what patch increased or changed the Chaffee. I still think it's pretty good, but I don't think it's as good as it used to be. And I put camo on it, spent gold on it a long time ago, so that's the only reason it's still in my garage. I've actually just today moved it up into my primary slot because I want to play some more games in it, just to see what it's like now. Its successor, more like a Chaffee, is the T-37, and again, loved the T-37, thought it was an amazing tank, but I haven't played the T-37 since 9.6 was released, so I don't know what the gun is like, don't know what the accuracy changes have done to the tank, so I've moved the T-37 back up into the primary slot so that I can play some more games in it in 9.6. Bulldog is a tank I just moved into my primary slot today. Finally used free XP to unlock the autoloader. So I've never played the Bulldog, and I'm going to be playing it for the first time on the very next stream, so looking forward to playing a brand new tank, looking forward to starting the grind towards the T-49. M12 is still another relatively new tank. Simply, this is one of the RT lines I'm grinding. Just got a long way to go, long way to go till the M40, M43. But yeah, what can I say? Just trying to get an ace tanker in it and grinding out the M12. My crew aren't very good, so my crew are going to get a lot of experience during this grind. T1 Cunningham is a tank, again, I rebought quite recently. Rebought it to get the ace tanker. Was planning to sell it, and then it occurred to me I don't actually own any tier 1s, so after getting the ace tanker and the T1 Cunningham, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to keep it. So there we go, my first ever tier 1 in the garage. I'm keeping it just simply so that I have a tier 1, just in case I ever start playing with someone who's just new to the game and I want to platoon with them. Moving on, T71 was one of my favorite scouts, still is one of my favorite scouts, even with the introduction of the Bulldog. The buff it got in 9.6 is amazing. I think the shooting on the move is fantastic in this tank. I think it's a much better tank than it was. I thought it was a great tank in 9.5. It's much better in 9.6. T71, one of my top 5 tanks in World of Tanks, and I'm never going to sell this. The Easy 8 is a tank I rebought recently, simply just to get the ace tanker in it. I'll be selling it soon after getting the ace tanker in it. First time round, I actually did very well. Apparently I've got an 88% win ratio on this tank. Don't know how many games I played in it first time round, considering I didn't know what I was doing, but yeah, as soon as I get the Ace Tanker, I'll be selling this and moving on to the Sherman Jumbo. So I need to stick a crew in this, need to start playing it. But again, new tank, new acquisition. T20 is a tank I actually don't know why I kept, but yet every time I play the T20, I tend to do well in it. Again, I put a video of the T20 up on the channel recently. It's just a solid medium tank. There's nothing it's particularly good at. There's nothing it's bad at. It's just a good medium tank. The only thing that annoys me about this tank is its rate of fire, but even its rate of fire isn't that bad. So T20, just a very solid tank, and I decided to keep it. And its big brother, the M26 Pershing, or the Pershing, is probably, in my opinion, one of the best all-rounders in the game. I think the Pershing is if I had a definition of a perfect medium tank, I think the Pershing would be pretty close to it. It's just a jack of all trades. It can flank, it can go hull down, it can use it, or can be used as a hill warrior, it can be used as a sniper, it can be used to hold a choke point. It's just a great all-rounder, and it's not great at anything, it's not bad at anything. The armor is okay on the hull, but definitely you can use this tank hull down and surprise a lot of people with its surprisingly bouncy turret. Pershing, definitely worth keeping in my opinion. T69, yeah, I've covered this on a video recently. T69 and I just don't get along. I don't do particularly badly in the tank, my win rate's okay, my stats in it are okay. I just don't play this tank as well as I see other people playing it, and that's just my fault. It's not the tank's fault. It's a pretty solid tank, definitely worth playing, definitely worth grinding out to, and even though the tank and I don't get along all that well, I decided to keep it because I just enjoy it. I enjoy it even though it doesn't give me monster games. The Tier 9 M46 Patton is a new well, it's not a new purchase, it's been in my garage for ages, but even though I've got a very, very good crew in it, the Patton is probably one of the worst stock grinds in the game. As you can see, you need a lot of free XP, a heck of a lot of free XP, to unlock some really, really decent guns. 68,000 free XP to unlock the final gun, the 105. The 90mm is the same gun that's on the Pershing, and it's not a great gun on the Pershing, and it's going to be even worse on the Patton. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the M46 Patton that needs to be unlocked to make it playable, in my opinion. And a lot of people reckon it's one of the worst stock grinds in the game, so I need a lot of free XP before I start playing the Patton. But it's in my garage. T54E1, exactly the same story as the Patton, except this time I don't have a crew. It's a Tier 9 tank I bought while it was on sale. Again, I need free XP to unlock the final gun and the track, so that's 64,000 free XP I need before the tank is playable, and even then I don't have a crew for it, but I will get around to it eventually. Moving on, we've got the T29, probably one of the best Tier 7 tanks in the game. First real American heavy in my opinion. It's just a great tank, and from the T29 you get to the T32, another tank I decided to keep because I think the T32 is a little bit underrated. A lot of people don't like the T32 because it uses the same gun as on the T29, and 198mm of penetration is not very good when you're up against Tier 9s and 10s, but the premium ammo is okay. I think the T32 is a very solid, underrated tank, and I decided to keep it. M103 is supposedly a very good tank, but as per usual, no crew for this tank, and don't have enough XP to unlock modules, but I'll get there eventually. It's a tank I'm looking forward to playing. T18 was a tank I rebought in the old days simply just to train up American TD crews, because there were no American TD premium tanks in the game. There still aren't, except for the heavy tank concept, and that's not a premium tank. It's a reward tank, so I bought the T18 to train up medium or TD crews for the Americans, and just don't play it enough. As you can see, I've never got 6th Sense. I just don't play the T18 a lot. I found it incredibly overpowered, but again, if you're having a really, really bad day, pop in the T18 and just have some fun, stress relief. M8A1 is for a long time, this was the only Tier 4 tank I had. In fact, it was the only non-premium tank or the only tank I had that wasn't a premium tank from tier 5 and below. M8A1, my favorite tier 4 tank in the game. I love the M8A1. Even with the view range changes, I still love the M8A1. I think it's a really, really good tier 4 tank. It's my favorite tier 4 tank in the game. And there's going to be an ace tanker coming to the channel very soon. T67, again, once upon a time, this was probably the most OP tier 5 in the game. Absolutely love this tank, but as soon as they changed it from the T49 to the T67 and took away its beautiful turret and left it with this monstrosity, to be honest, I haven't played too many games in it because I think it's ugly, but it was a keeper and I need to play it more because it got a view range nerf, so be interesting to see again how the view range affects the T67, so another tank I need to replay. The Wolverine is a tank I decided to keep because, I don't know, it's got a great gun, its armor is very, very troll. Hellcat was a tank I decided to keep a long time ago, spent gold on camo for it, and then it got nerfed into the ground. I still think it's a pretty good tank, but definitely nowhere near as good as it used to be. The biggest thing for me, the biggest change for me was the reverse speed. It affected the way I play the tank a lot. I used to pop out, take a shot, and reverse into cover. Can't do that in the M18 Hellcat anymore. Need to play it a lot more passively, a lot more like a TD. Whereas before you could play it a lot more like a medium tank or even a light tank, but it's still a pretty decent tank. The only reason I'm keeping it is because I spent gold on it, but I don't think I'll be playing that many games in it. And the Jackson, its counterpart, the other tier 6 TD, I decided to keep because, I don't know, chalk and cheese. I quite like the Jackson. I like the fact the armor is quite troll and it's got a great gun. It's got the Hellcat gun before the Hellcat's gun got nerfed. So the gun on the Jackson I think is a little bit better. And that's why I decided to keep it. The T25-2 and the T25-8T. Both tanks I bought. I don't have crews, or at least I don't have a very good crew. Don't have a crew for this one. These are tanks I just haven't got around to playing. Both tanks are stock. Both tanks need free XP to make them playable. Both tanks need decent crews, and yeah, I've kind of paused on the American TDs. So looking at the tech tree, yep, I'm up to tier 7 on the American RT, on the grind to the M40, M43. Bulldog is a brand new tank, haven't played it yet, will be doing it on the next stream, which is probably a week away at the time I'm making this video. Yeah, on the newest American medium line, I'm up to tier 9, but again, don't have a crew, need to play the T54E1, need to unlock some modules before playing it. American TDs, I've kind of stopped at the Hellcat and Jackson. I own the T25s, the AT and the Dash 2, but really, I'm in no hurry to play American TDs. If there was an American TD premium tank in the game, then I would be playing more American TDs. But the problem for me is always crews, and I don't have enough crews. And I'm in no hurry to play the T28 prototype, the T28, the T95, or even the T30. Not in a hurry. These tanks don't excite me. Even the E4 doesn't excite me. About the only tank along here I'd be interested in playing is the E3, because that's supposedly a beast. So really, American TDs, I'm not in a hurry to get to tier 10. I've kind of stuck at tier 6, haven't moved on very much. The older medium tank line, I'm stuck on the M46 pattern, worst stock grind in the game, need free XP, but do have a crew. M103, similar story, tier 9, stuck at the M103, need free XP, need a crew. So Americans have kind of stalled. I haven't been playing very many US tanks, but that's the problem when you have a lot of tanks in your garage. Moving on, we'll take a look at the USSR, and we'll look at the premium tanks. BTSV, a tank that's kind of been a little bit underwhelming, a little bit disappointing, but it's still a very, very, very good tank. Need to sit down, need to play a lot of games in it in order to do a review for it. KV-220 is a tank I've reviewed, and just looking at it now, I still realize I don't play this tank often enough. I think this is an amazing tank. I think this is a very, very good tank for a new player, if it's going to be your first premium tank. If it's available in the gift shop, that is. I think the KV-220 is very, very solid. You need to have very, very good games in order to get an ace tanker, and I just haven't done it yet. But then again, I don't play that many games in the tank, but it's a great tank. Tetrarch, probably the best premium or best free tank Wargaming ever gave out. Only way to get your hands on it now is in special packages or bundles in the gift shop, but yeah, it's got its problems. It's got poor terrain resistance, it's got poor traverse, very fast in a straight line but doesn't maneuver very well. It's got a great gun, but it's got poor view range. But it's still, I think it's a very, very good gift tank. Probably the best that Wargaming ever give out. Pretty close to it, though, is the LTP. A lot of people hate this tank, but I think it's okay. I've reviewed it, and I think it's okay. It's not an amazing tank. It's very, very average. About the only thing that's very, very good about the LTP is the fact it's got 52 degrees per second traverse speed. So this tank turns incredibly well. But other than that, there's nothing spectacular about it. M3 Light, very rare tank. Very few people have it. This was the original gift tank that you got for completing the original Wargaming World of Tanks tutorial. It's since been removed. The only time you get this now is in special bundles in the gift shop. Again, not spectacular. It was a free tank given out just for completing the tutorial. Most people sold theirs straight away just to get a free garage slot. I kept mine. Happy I did, because, as I say, it's very, very rare these days. Nothing special. Very, very fast in a straight line. Traverse speed isn't great, and it turns really, really badly. So, fast in a straight line, maneuvers badly. The gun is quite good, but it has very, very poor view range for a light tank. Again, I reviewed this tank a long time ago. I think it was my second ever review. I'd really, really like to come back and revisit that, because I'm not sure what I said or did in that review, but that was before I was playing 20 or 30 games in a tank before doing a review. My early reviews were all done just from my impressions of probably a handful of games in those tanks. T127, probably one of the best tier 3 premium tanks in the game. Reviewed it. It's a great tank, and if you're new or inexperienced at the game, I really do recommend this tank. It's a great tank to learn how to play World of Tanks in. It's very, very cheap. Don't be in a hurry to get to tier 8 or buy a tier 8 premium tank. You can learn how to play World of Tanks in the T127 just fine. Valentine 2, tank I don't play very often. It's slow, it's situational, and the gun is lacking. But it only sees tier 4s. It's one of these tanks that's always top tier. The camo rating is absolutely amazing on this tank. So it does have some strengths, it does have some weaknesses, but it's a tank I don't find a lot of fun to play, so I don't play it very often. I have reviewed it. The Matilda 4, another recent review. Again, liked the tank, thought the tank was quite good, hated the gun. And I hated the gun to the point where I don't think the tank was worth it. The tank was a big, big disappointment. So that's been reviewed. Speaking of disappointments and speaking of recent reviews, I also recently reviewed the T-34-85M. And again, this tank was a big, big disappointment. I was so looking forward to a decent medium tank because the Matilda 4 was terrible in my opinion. And this tank was just average. The stats looked amazing. I was so looking forward to this tank, so excited to play the T-34-85M, 53 kilometers an hour top speed, 40 degrees traverse speed, a semi-decent gun, and armor. You actually got some armor, but big disappointment. This plays more like a heavy tank than it does a medium tank. I think the ground resistance on the tank is terrible. The power to weight ratio is terrible. It takes forever to accelerate. It's just slow, it's sluggish, and a disappointment. I'm not saying you can't have good games in the tank. It's definitely not as good as the stats would have you believe. Again, reviewed it recently. Another recent review was the Churchill 3, and this is the quintessential tank I think everyone needs to own. If you're new to the game and you're thinking about buying a premium tank, this should be at the top of your list. It's just a very, very good tank to learn how to play World of Tanks in, and at the same time, it's a good credit earner. It's got a great gun. It's a great crew trainer. You can learn how to side scrape. You can learn how to angle. It's got its weak spots. Anyone who knows what they're doing is going to pen your turret, but it's just a great tank. It's not fast enough to get you into trouble, and it's not slow enough to be painfully frustrating to play. I think it's a great tank. It's been reviewed. You can check it out. KV5, yeah, I either have great games in this tank or terrible games. This tank is quite situational depending on the matchmaker, but I really need to sit down and play more games in it, because I think if you check, I think I've only played about 10 or 11 games in the KV5, so I really need to play this tank more. Can't really say much more about it. IS-6, the best all-rounder, best tier 8 premium tank in the game in my opinion. I think this is just an amazing all-rounder. Special matchmaking. There are rumors that Wargaming are going to be removing it from the gift shop because of its special matchmaking and replacing it with another version of the IS-6. But it's just a great all-rounder. It's a great tank for random battles. The armor is surprisingly troll. The gun is decent. The premium ammo is decent. Doesn't get that much ammo, but yeah, people can argue it's not the fastest, but it's not slow. People can argue it's not, it hasn't got great view range, but if you're trying to use view range and trying to use this tank to snipe, you're doing it wrong. I think this is a great all-rounder. Definitely one of the best tier 8 premium tanks you can buy. Su-85i. Alright, I think this tank got more views, the review for this tank got more views than any other video I have ever done. And a lot of that is down to the fact, when this tank was released, I bought this tank at 7 AM in the morning on the day it was released. No information was known about this tank. All the information that was provided about the tank was wrong. The What Wiki was wrong. The crew information was wrong. Even the tiers this tank faced was wrong. Most of the information about the tank was wrong. So I ended up buying it at 7 AM in the morning. By midday, I'd played 30-something games in the tank. And by about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, I had made and finished the review. All based off my own experience of playing the tank. And because I got the review out on the day it was released in the gift shop, I think I was one of the first people on YouTube to actually have a review of the tank out. And a lot of people disliked the fact I reviewed the tank so badly. I gave this tank a very bad review. And do I regret it? No, I still think it's a terrible tank. There are so few strengths. I mean, the only strength that this tank has is its DPM. Almost everything else about this tank is a weakness, and really when I suppose the only thing I maybe got wrong in the review when I was talking about the Su-85i was its view range. I compared it against a couple of tanks that have great view range, and as a result I said, yeah, the view range is absolutely terrible, it's as blind as a bat. But I forgot that there are tanks and tier 5 TDs in the game with view range that's worse than the Su-85i. Tanks like the Stug. So the view range actually wasn't as bad as I talked about in the review, but I think that is the only thing I would change if I was redoing the review. I still think it's a terrible tank, but I will say it has great DPM, but a tank that only has one strength and then has about 20 weaknesses is still not a great tank in my opinion. So anyway, that's just it. Su-85i. Most people got their introduction to Irish through the review on the Su-85i. I still get abuse about this tank. I still get messages and private messages telling me I don't know what the hell I'm talking about when people see this review. Yeah. Just if you guys are watching this, you're probably subscribed to my channel. I review tanks, I talk about their strengths, I talk about their weaknesses, and yeah, it's just, if this tank is all weaknesses, then it's not going to get a positive review. I don't care if you love the tank, it's just full of weaknesses. Speaking of tanks with a lot of weaknesses and very few strengths, the Su-100Y. This is a tank I'm going to review fairly soon. It's a tier 6. It might be the next review after the FCM50T, who knows. But yeah, Su-100Y. Great tank, great crew trainer. I think the gun is very good, the ammo choices are very good, but it's very situational, can be frustrating. We'll talk about it more in the review. And the Su-12244 is a tank I covered very recently on the channel, and I am looking forward to reviewing this tank. I'm looking forward to playing it. It's a very good tank in in my opinion. Moving on to normal, I've got a lot of normal Russian tanks. LTTB, I would say it's a fairly recent purchase, but not really. I've finished grinding it. I've actually unlocked the T-54 lightweight, but the LTTB, I love this tank in 9.5. I don't like the tank as much in 9.6. I found the accuracy really affected this tank. Accuracy changes have really affected the LTTB. Just the way I play it. I played this tank aggressively. I played it on the move, did a lot of shooting on the move, and I found the accuracy changes hurt this tank a lot. Even though I've played quite a few games in it, I actually haven't got a great win rate, and I haven't even managed a first class badge in it. So it's a tank I really need to spend more time in. Maybe stop playing it as much as a scout and start playing it a little bit more like a sniper. But it's just my playstyle. But the LTTB, it's a great tank, even though I'm not doing particularly well in it. I'm enjoying it. The T-54 lightweight is a tank I do own. The problem is I don't have a crew for it. You can actually mount all the equipment with the exception of the tracks on the tank. But as I say, the problem is I don't have a crew for the T-54 lightweight, so I need to train up a new crew for this tank before starting to play it. But yeah, I will be playing the T-54 lightweight sooner rather than later. T-54 is one of my grinders. I'm grinding the T-54. I'm on my way to the T-62A and the Object 140. T-54, great tank. Recommend everyone have the T-54 in their garage. Thankfully, I've got a couple of medium tank crews ready to go into the tier 10s. KV-1 is a tank I rebought recently because I don't actually own. I never actually got the ace tanker in the KV-1 first time around, just ground through it. It's a great tank. It's a great tier 5 heavy tank. Looking forward to playing it. I think I've played about 2 games in it since rebuying it, but need to replay it, need to get the ace tanker. I'll probably end up keeping it. What I did do recently is I bought the KV-1S, the tier 5 KV-1S, because I didn't buy it before now. So this is actually a new tank. I don't have any history in this tank. I put the derp gun on it just to try it out. Haven't played too many games in it, but again, need to play it just to get the ace tanker. I don't know whether I'm going to be keeping it, but we'll see. It's quite a lot of fun, but I have found the armor was letting me down. KV-85, the old KV-1S. I put this back up into my primary tanks because I realized when I sat down to start this video that I hadn't actually got an ace tanker. I've got lots of ace tankers, but that was when it was the KV-1S, so haven't played. I think I've played about 4 games on the KV-85 since it became the KV-85, and I don't think I've aced it since it became a KV-85. IS-8 is a tank I have never played, and I'm going to start to. I was looking at the tech tree. I was looking at the resources here. The IS-3 comes after the IS-8 comes after the IS-3, and the IS-3 is a very good tank. But I was looking at this, I was seeing that, you know what, this tank is actually playable stock because it gets the BL9. And the BL9 is a tank I don't mind using even against tier 10s when I'm in the IS-3. So I think I'm going to be playing the IS-8 from stock. One of the first tier 9 tanks I'm playing from stock in a long time. I think stock, it might play a lot like the IS-3. I've got a crew for it, so yeah, next stream I'll guess I'm going to start grinding out all the modules, playing the IS-8 from stock, and start on the march to the IS-7. We'll see. SU-152 is a tank I rebought a few months ago, but I rebought it because I just love my derp guns. So trying to get 6 cents on the commander, and then I'll drop it down into my reserves. But it's a keeper. I'm going to keep it forever. SU-12254 is one of my curse tanks. It's a tank I actually like a lot, but I just can't get the ace in it. For some reason, I've just stopped playing it. I played it recently on a recent stream, but it's probably been about 4 months before that stream, or between that stream and the last time I played it. I need to play it, need to get the ace. It's a great tank. I think if you like the SU-12244, the premium tank, you're gonna love this tank. It's basically the same tank with a better gun and slightly better frontal armor. It's a great tank. I do enjoy it, but I need to ace it. SU-14-2 is one of my newest purchases. I actually rebought the I bought the SU-14-1 recently. Aced it a few days ago, sold it and bought this one, and I'm having a lot of fun. I'd hate to say it, guys, don't unsubscribe, but I think think this is going to be the first RT I end up keeping that isn't a tier 10 and isn't a premium tank. I'm enjoying this RT a lot. I know it's cruel, but sometimes it's fun to be cruel. The fact you can put vents on an RT is awesome, so enjoying this tank a lot, hope to ace it soon, and moving on. KV-13 is a tank I rebought to get an ace tanker in and decided to keep because it's just a great medium tank. I think a lot of people underestimate it, but great frontal armor, very fast in a straight line. I think the KV-13 is quite strong. A44, another tier 7 medium tank. Again, I think it's very, very troll. I haven't decided 100% as to whether or not I'm going to be keeping this tank, but it can be a lot of fun to play, or it can be frustrating to play, depending on whether or not the gun or the armor behaves. Again, I put a video up about this tank recently, so moving on. T44, another tank I rebought recently just to get the ace tanker. Managed to get the ace tanker, and yeah, I decided to keep it. It's a much better tank. Excuse me. It's a much better tank than I remember first time round. Hated the T44 the first time I played it, and now that I'm more experienced at the game, I think the T44 is actually quite good, but definitely not as good as the T54, tier 9. Object 416 is another tank I bought, but usual story. Need to unlock modules and don't have a crew for it. Need a crew. Moving on. T150, another tank I rebought to get the ace tanker and ended up deciding to keep. I think it's underrated. I think it's got a great gun. I think a lot of people underestimate the DPM and firepower of the T150. It may not be the fastest or most maneuverable, but I think the tank can be a lot of fun to play. Speaking of fun to play, the KV-2, probably my favorite tank in the game, and yeah, it's just a stress relief tank. When you've been having a tough day, want to relieve some stress, play the KV-2. KV-3 is a tank I actually rebought recently just to get the ace tanker. I won't be keeping it, I'll sell it straight afterwards. But usual problem, need a crew. Need a crew from somewhere for this tank. But as soon as I get the ace, I'll be selling it. No reason to keep it, just rebought it for that one reason. KV-4, however, is a tank I decided to keep. This tank is troll. It's another good tank to learn how to play World of Tanks in. A little bit situational, get it into a tier 10 game. The armor isn't very good, and therefore the tank isn't very good. But when the tank gets top tier, I think it's a very, very good tank, and that's why I decided to keep it. IS-3, probably one of the best all-rounders in the game. I think this is an amazing tank. I think the 110 is a little bit better nowadays, but IS-3, it doesn't matter what type of map you get it onto, whether it's big open map or a city map. It doesn't matter whether or not you're top tier, or IS-3 can perform even in a tier 10 game. And when the worst comes to the worst, the IS-3 can be used as a medium tank. It's fast enough, it's maneuverable enough, so I think it's one of the best all-round tanks in the game. The ST-1, again, tank that really, really surprised me. Really, really enjoy the ST-1. Decided to keep it pretty much after about 2 or 3 games in it. As long as you can keep that lower glacis hidden and know how to side scrape an angle, I think the ST-1 is a really, really good tank. And I recently unlocked and bought the IS-4, but no crew. So this is a tier 10, and I've never played it. So I need to build up a new heavy crew. Due to the fact there are so many Russian heavy premium tanks, I don't think that's going to take very long. So I'm going to need a new crew for the IS-4, but as soon as I find one, this is the tank I'm going to start playing. Looking forward to the IS-4 immensely, even though it does have a very weak turret roof not many people know about. IS-152, or ISU-152, definitely worth keeping. It's just the quintessential derp gun. It's another one of these tanks that basically just you hop into to have fun, even though it's a tier 8 that can see tier 10s. This BL-10 is just a monster gun. And if you don't fancy playing a lightly armored machine, you can always play the Object 704, which is another tank I decided to keep. Again, you've got the BL-10, but this time you've got a faster, more mobile TD with frontal armor that can actually bounce shots. The armor on this can be surprisingly troll, and as I say, BL-10, so Object 704 is definitely a keeper for me. SU-101 is another tank I rebought recently. Absolutely hated this tank first time round, although technically I should have liked it because it's a lot like the Jagdpanther 2. The difference is, though, this thing gets no gun depression. So, as you can see, my stats of the tank when I was playing this tank as a new player first time round weren't very good. It'll be interesting to see how well I do in it these days, but I didn't like it first time round. So, need a crew, and as soon as I get a crew for this tank, I will start trying to get the ace tanker in the 101. I don't think I'm going to be keeping it. I'll probably sell it and move on to some other tank afterwards, but just a tank I rebought for the ace. Moving on. This is taking forever, guys, but we're finally there. Light at the end of the tunnel. I bet you guys who asked me to do a garage review and talk about all the tanks are regretting it now. Yeah, premium Chinese tanks. We've got, or Japanese tanks, I should say. We've got the Tiki, which surprised me. This thing can be a little beast. A lot of people think this is a terrible tank. I've reviewed it. I don't think it's a terrible tank. This thing has amazing gun depression and it's got a great gun. Yeah, it may not be the most maneuverable. It may have terrible armor, but it's a tiny target and it's got amazing gun depression with a good gun. So yeah, Tiki, surprisingly fun to play. The other Japanese tank I own is the Chinokai premium tank, and I don't think this tank is very good. If you like Japanese tanks, then the Chinokai is fine. I tend not to like Chinese tanks or Japanese tanks, as you're about to see. So yeah, the Chinokai, it's a premium tank. I mean, you're gonna earn credits in it. It's a decent crew trainer for Japanese crews, but yeah, it's just not an exciting tank for me. I just don't enjoy playing it. When we come on to the normal Japanese tanks, I've only got two. I've got the Chiri, which is a tank I currently only have because I haven't been able to get the flaming ace. As soon as I ace this tank, I'll be selling it. Basically, I just hate the Chiri. I just don't like it. I will admit the gun can be quite good and the gun can be quite troll, but I just hate this tank. I dislike it immensely. But yet someone out there is playing it really, really well because it's bloody difficult to get an ace tanker. The other Japanese tank I currently have is the STA-1, and I actually do have a crew for it. They're probably still sitting in the Chinokai. But the STA-1 is going to be the next tank I'm working on. As you can see, I have free XP'd most of the modules. I've got the 90mm, and I'm actually playing around with playing the STA with the 90mm and just using that to grind out the second 90mm for the final gun. The reason being is I'm going to need the STA-1 in order to do an STA-2 review, and I want to spend some time and get to learn this tank before I do. So technically speaking, I suppose I could start playing this now. The 90mm is good enough, I suppose, but up against tier 9s, tier 10s, maybe. We'll see. You know what? Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's put some equipment on this. So view range is 390. That's good. That's coded optics view range. Ooh, 500,000. Okay. And we're going to need vert stabs, I think. We can always change this later on. That's $1 million I've spent on this tank already. So vert stabs, coded optics, and a gun rammer. Let's just go with the standard. I can't believe I've run out of all of this equipment. Alright, that's 1.2 million just spent on this tank. So, yeah, I think we're going to put this into the primaries. We're going to start playing it with the second last gun. But there we go. That is where I am on the tech trees. Japanese tech tree, very, very easy. I didn't really want to keep any of the Japanese tanks. The Kiho, the tier 4 light tank, is the only Japanese tank I actually liked. But I thought the others were either okay or not very good. Kiho I actually thought was quite good, but not enough to keep it. I'll be selling the Chiri, and I'll probably move the Chiri crew into the Type 61 when I finally get the Type 61. I actually see myself keeping the STA, Type 61, and STB, but we shall see. So, yeah, there we go. That's it. Questions have been answered. That is my garage review. How long is this video going to be? If you're still with me, congratulations. I can't believe you've got so much patience. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you next time.